right, everyone. Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. Well, this is a chat that I'm very excited for because, first of all, I'm always excited to talk to Dennis, who is our libertarian ethicist and expert extraordinaire on all things libertarian philosophy and all these things. And he's a wealth of knowledge. He's also the organizer of PorcFest, which is the best libertarian thing I've ever been to, and awesome. And I can't wait for next year already, Dennis. I've already bought my tickets. I'm ready to go. We just have to wait a little less than a year, I guess now. But I wanted to have this chat with Dennis, and I know that this is a topic that he's been really interested in talking about publicly as well, because, for me, my journey to the Libertarian Party is I almost joined it in 2020. I really did. I was having lots of conversations with people. I was starting to realize that my philosophies really align with just like more a libertarian approach, which is get the F out of my business and like I'll leave you alone too. And then we can all go our separate ways and do our separate things. And then this thing happened. That the Libertarian presidential candidate, Joe Jorgensen, tweeted in support of anti-racism and Black Lives Matter. And that was all she wrote for me. And I was like, I don't need to see any more. I am not supporting a party who does this. I don't like, this is an extremist ideology. These are horrible, horrible people. And then not too long after she tweeted that, I think it was when I got chased down the street by Black Lives Matter in Dallas. And I was like, no go of supporting the party that supports Black Lives Matter. And so that was kind of the end of my journey to the Libertarian Party in 2020. And then they got my attention again when they noted Nick Sarwark in New Hampshire. And I was like, what's going on? And so that's when I looked back at the Mises Caucus again and said, okay, so there are actual libertarians in the Libertarian Party. Fantastic. And that's how I ended up back there now. But Dennis, we wanted to have a conversation. I want to touch on this tweet in particular because I know this has been kind of like a firestorm moment. Like I literally hear about this tweet all the time. But we also want to talk more broadly about bigotry in the Libertarian Party and the libertarian philosophy behind this. And, this was supposed to be a subject at PorcFest. There was supposed to be a great debate about this at PorcFest, and then one of the debaters didn't show up. So I guess we get to have the conversation here. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Carlin. Yeah, I was very excited to talk to you about this. We've actually talked a little bit offline about this a few times. It was funny at PorcFest because I think what happened was the guy who was the SJW libertarian who really wanted to talk about why libertarianism obviously includes anti-bigotry. I think he finally realized that he was actually debating another libertarian who happened to be Black. Who was making what I think is the correct argument, the logical argument that libertarianism is something separate from bigotry and all that other type of stuff, and that trying to include bigotry within libertarianism actually destroys libertarianism. So I was actually also very interested in the argument. Kevin was the one who actually proposed the debate, and he was really excited about it. And I think Archie just was kind of surprised when he found out about, a day or two right beforehand that the guy was actually Black, because he was going to do the typical, white privilege and all this type of crap. Now, the ethical argument isn't really dependent upon our skin color. So it shouldn't have mattered. To someone like Archie, it does matter though. And it's kind of sad because I think I'm going to be talking a little bit about the ethics of libertarianism. It's a universalist philosophy. It applies to all human beings, all skin colors, all different types, all beliefs. So I think it's a beautiful thing that can actually bring us all together. And then when the SJWs come in and they try to separate us out by groups, it actually destroys what I think is such a beautiful part of libertarianism. We've seen this problem not just with the JoJo tweet, but this was actually the precipitating factor that caused the executive board of the Libertarian National Committee to try to steal the property of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party.
Well, and I was going to bring this up too, because you and I both got kicked out of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party when we hadn't signed a loyalty oath stating that we would unequivocally oppose bigotry. And I was like, what the heck is this? I didn't know this was a thing when I signed up and paid you my dues.
Well, it was actually even more than that. The precipitating factor was they didn't like some of the messaging because they thought that the messaging wasn't SJW, wasn't woke enough.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, the messaging doesn't have to be woke. The messaging has to be libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
But they value wokeness more than the libertarian ethics. And so I'm going to try to break why those two things are different and how we can think about them differently. But you saw it with the JoJo tweet, which split apart the Libertarian Party, and outside of libertarians, they didn't understand why there was this big battle going on.
Yeah, I mean, so tell me more about that, because I didn't know, I think if you aren't involved in the Libertarian Party, you don't see any of this stuff, because from an outsider perspective, all I saw was the tweet and kind of made the assumption that spoke for the Libertarian Party, but I didn't know that this was like a big controversy in the Libertarian Party until much later. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, let me kind of go into a little bit about what libertarianism is.
Sure.
Libertarianism, you can think of libertarianism as kind of a reaction against narcissism and psychopathy, with there being a political power behind the narcissism and psychopathy. So the basis of authoritarianism, it is you will live how I choose, otherwise your body is forfeit. You will comport your body, you'll labor, you'll associate, you'll use the product of your labor however I command, or I can start hurting your body, including killing it, should you disobey me. Mm-hmm. That's the authoritarian philosophy. Now, libertarianism is saying, well, look, you can have your opinions about what you want me to do or what you want to do, but I actually own my own body. And you have no right whatsoever to control what I put into, what I take out of, with whom I associate, how I labor, how I leisure, or what I do with the products of my body. Mm-hmm. So that is the big differentiator between authoritarianism, which is you will act however I choose you to act, versus libertarianism, that each human being fully owns their own body and may choose how they act their own body. Mm-hmm. So that's just a gigantic difference. And if you think of the psychopath who wants to use other human beings as their tools, right? Libertarianism is a terrible philosophy, absolutely horrible. They want to use you as their slave, and now all of a sudden you're saying, "Oh no, I'm a fully owned human being by myself. You have no right or control over me." It's also terrible for narcissists, right? Narcissists, they think that they're so fabulous that everyone should act just like they do. But the libertarian says, well, no, that's not true. You have no control over how someone else acts on their own property, in their own home, with their own body. Mm-hmm. Now, libertarianism oftentimes is talked about as a philosophy. And I argue that libertarianism is not a full philosophy. It is the minimum requirement that we owe other human beings. Now, generally, we don't owe other human beings a bunch of things, right? So I don't owe you a living wage. I don't owe you food. I don't owe you, because otherwise, if I owed you that, you could actually force me to give that to you. You could enslave me to give that to you. And libertarianism says, no. You own your own body. I own my own body. You own the product of your own body. I own the product of my own body. I may gift you things, but I am not your slave and you are not my slave. Mm-hmm. But we do say that there's a minimum obligation. And that minimum obligation is that I may not transgress against your body. I may not attack your body for whatever it is that you choose to do with your body, nor may you attack me. Our favorite SJW libertarian, Nick Sarwark, recently put out something. They said, and I'll paraphrase here, that libertarianism is like the guardrails on the side of a highway. They're important, and they prevent you from going over the cliff, right? The cliff would be going into evil. But it doesn't tell you where to go, which direction to take, or how to be a courteous driver.
Right.
All those things I think are really important. I'm actually kind of into virtue ethics and things like that. So I think that those things are really important. I try to live my life, being really conscious around those things. But they're not part of libertarianism. Libertarianism is only saying, don't go and violate another human being. How you live your life, though, that's a big issue. And we have to look to other things, other philosophies and other religions to find out how we should live with that. Mm-hmm. Now, the trouble with, authoritarians, they go, well, I live my life like X, and therefore everyone else should live their life like X. And if they don't, well, I'm going to fine them, and if they ignore the fines, I'll cage them. If they don't go into the cage, I'll beat them. And if they resist the beating, I'll maim them. And if they continue, fine, I'll kill them. Mm-hmm. Libertarians, though, also are not necessarily absent of narcissism. We all, as human beings, have narcissistic capabilities, and what it comes down to, and this has been a problem, this has been a debate within libertarianism ever since its inception. And it's something we call thick libertarianism versus thin libertarianism.
Okay.
Thin libertarianism is that guardrails idea. It's only self-ownership. That's the only thing that libertarianism cares about. Do not use violence to violate someone's self-ownership. We really care about that. All of the great evils of mankind are based on violations of self-ownership. That's how governments have killed 250 million people over the last century. And so it's so important to get those guardrails in that's the reason why we focus on libertarianism. But life is so much more rich than that. So you need religion, you need philosophy, you need customs, and you need groups, and you need your social, and all of those may have different morals that you'll follow, and different customs, and different preferences, and different virtues. A thick libertarian, though, says, look, libertarianism, yes, libertarianism is don't violate someone's self-ownership, but this idea of caring enough about people requires additional things besides just not violating another person's body. Mm-hmm. So we have thick libertarians who are Ayn Randians. Okay. They say, oh well, it's not just self-ownership, but also you have to be only self-interested. We have libertarians who are rugged individualists, and if they're thick, they'll say, everyone needs to be rugged individualists. Mm-hmm. We have some thick libertarians who really believe in family values, and they think, in order to be a good libertarian, you really need to support the family and that type of thing. Conversely, we have libertarians who are thick, and they are libertine, and they say, no, you have to embrace different sexual functions and different sexual activities and different, drugs. And if you don't do that, you're not libertarian. We have thick libertarians who are pacifists and say that, any use of violence, because libertarians don't believe in the initiation of violence, but they believe in that defensive violence may be used if you choose. Pacifists will say, oh, no. To be a libertarian, you may not use defensive violence. So all down the things, Christians will say you need to be Christian. Thick Christian libertarians will say that you need to have Christianity in you.
That sounds like a Republican to me.
We also have atheist libertarians who are thick. And they say, no, if you actually believe in some, big God in the sky, big ghost in the sky, you can't be a libertarian. So we have this all throughout libertarianism. It's been a fight with all these different groups across decades. Mm-hmm. It just so happens that the most successful group right now are the SJW libertarians, the SJW thick libertarians. And the only reason why they are so successful is because they control the press.
Okay.
And so all of our political leaders, you know, especially in the Libertarian Party, but also in the Free State Project, they are so scared of bad press that they are kowtowing to the press. And so what they're doing is they're conflating libertarianism, that thin, very thin ethic of you own your own body and I will not violate you, with other values. And in this case, they're SJW values. So the Free State Project a few years ago added a sentence. They, in their statement, that, you know, the Free State Project does not take positions on issues, candidates, legislation, places to move within New Hampshire, tactics, or methods of action. Which seems fine. Then they added this one sentence. The one stipulation the FSP does make is that people who promote violence, okay, we'll agree with that, racial hatred or bigotry are not welcome.
Well, that's a problem, isn't it?
That sentence was just added. It was added because of press force, the press, bad press that was occurring. And so they wanted to get ahead of it. And so they basically came in with this kind of SJW thing that opened the door to SJW. Libertarian Party platform also added something. In 3.5, libertarians embrace the concept that all people are born with certain inherent rights, right? We, of course, we believe that. We believe that you have the right to self-own. You have the right to your own body. We reject the idea that a natural right can ever impose an obligation on someone else to fulfill that right, right? Because if I have a right that you have to fulfill, that you have to do, you're my, basically, I can force you to be my slave. You know, if I have a right to health care, I can force you to provide me health care. And I can enslave you to provide me health care. And we reject that because that would be a violation of your self-ownership.
Right.
Now, here's the sentence that they added in just a few years ago. We condemn the bigotry as irrational and repugnant. How does that follow?
Right.
We were talking about natural rights, rights around self-ownership. And all of a sudden they go, we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant. Well, who cares? Look, if it's your body, you can have an irrational thought. You can have a repugnant thought because if it's your body, guess what? Your mind is actually part of that body, right? Yeah, as a matter of fact, you can say a bigotrous thought because your tongue and your mouth, those are parts of your body. You own that. And so here in this section where they're talking about natural rights, which to a libertarian is self-ownership, they're talking about natural rights. They throw in this sentence, we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant. It opens wide the door to SJWs. And now all of a sudden we have all the trouble that we've gotten into.
That's why you don't bend the knee to begin with. I mean, it's really, you never bend the knee or open the door to this stuff. And I think that, you know, I mean, we've had several chats, Dennis. I've somehow managed to have several chats with you, and you have not ever said anything that I would call bigoted or hateful in any of those chats. So it's not like you're promoting this idea of just being like irrationally hateful. You're just saying it shouldn't be part of the platform because people have their own minds and they should be able to think whatever they want. And we can choose to voluntarily associate with those people or not based on, I mean, like our own, I guess, internal values.
Yeah, well, actually, libertarianism is so important because without libertarianism, there is no ownership of one's own body. Our rulers own us. Through their laws, they can tell us what we may do with our bodies, how we may labor, how we may leisure, what we may put into it, what we may take out of it. And that which we invest our body, that we take our wear and tear of our body and our lifetime and all of our energy, and we build and create, they may take. Okay? To a libertarian, that is an evil. That is what constitutes evil. That type of slavery, that type of taking away someone's body. And what the SJWs are involved in is they're involved in a kind of mind control, right? They're saying,
Right.
we control your minds. You owe me a positive attitude. You owe this group a positive attitude. You owe that group a positive attitude. And we're saying, no. You have a choice around that. And as a matter of fact, people may or may not want to be around you depending on what your attitude is. But no, you do not owe somebody that. They do not have an enforceable requirement of you
Mm-hmm.
to have that type of positive attitude towards them. And thus they may not use violence against you. So it's so important that we break these things apart. I mean, if you think about it, this whole bigotry thing, right? I actually wrote down a definition of bigotry. Here it is. It's an obstinate attachment to an illogical opinion, especially against individuals of a particular group. Okay? Illogical opinion, basically irrational or not based on empiricism. So what is the entire SJW anti-white movement about? It is an illogical opinion against individuals of a particular group. They, just by being part of that SJW thing, they are demonstrating bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
Humans happen to be fairly bigoted people. The bigotry against the Mises Caucus is a perfect example. The SJWs are really bigoted against the Mises Caucus because the Mises Caucus doesn't agree with that SJW should be part and parcel of.
And they're winning. That's the other reason.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, they wouldn't care if the Mises Caucus. You're right. They wouldn't care if Mises Caucus were not winning. But because they have this illogical opinion about all people in Mises Caucus. I mean, it was so bad where one of the loser brigade SJWs accused one man of being a racist. Said basically, you are a racist until you prove me otherwise. Now, this is a person who actually, his significant other is black. And it was just like so rude. But that is an illogical opinion against an individual of a particular group, just for prejudice, just out of prejudice. So that is an example of bigotry. So these people demonstrate bigotry, and yet what they want to do is they want to be the police of bigotry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like, my question is, like, so again, I'm relatively new to this whole thing, but even this mentality to me seems to be pretty basic, and like, I would never have associated being woke with being a libertarian. And to be honest, like, I was pretty shocked when I discovered all of this stuff, and then especially shocked when I saw like Joe's tweet last year saying, we need to all be anti-racist and Black Lives Matter and all that. And it's just like, for me, it's very confusing how this ideology was able to take hold in the Libertarian Party of all places.
Now, see, I think that JoJo actually may be of that type, right? That she believes that she wants to be anti-racist. And that certainly is something that can fit underneath the libertarian umbrella.
Right.
I know people who practice something that's called, radical acceptance. And they will accept human beings no matter what. Mm-hmm. And they really work hard. It's an extraordinarily difficult practice. But if anybody's working towards anti-bigotry, it would be those types of people. The SJWs are not working towards that. They're actually trying to increase bigotry, but only increase it in their direction.
Right. And but this is like, again, and this is what's so confusing to me. Like, how was this ideology able to integrate itself so wholly? And I think we need to acknowledge there is a difference between, like, I guess, libertarianism, like small L, and then the Libertarian Party. But it really does blow my mind. Excuse me, that this ideology was able to permeate to the very highest levels of the Libertarian Party. And the party, which is like a relatively small group of people, like relatively speaking, they allowed that to happen. And I just like I don't understand how that was allowed to happen in this party where really the only foundational thing that you have that's like, like I don't know the word, like perpetual is the non-aggression principle. That's
Right.
it. Everything beyond that is kind of like different commentary and different perspective. But to me, like, I guess here's my question. Was it a lack of understanding about what this ideology was? Was it just thinking like, oh, this is what we need to do to be good people? This is what we need to do to be accepted? Was it striving for acceptance from the media and the powers that be? What was it that made wokeism really get a stranglehold into the Libertarian Party proper? Because I think we can acknowledge that it did on some level and still does have that, honestly.
Yeah, I think that the difference between the small L and the big L tends to try to play in politics, right? And they try to look good in the press, and they want to hobnob with people and things like that. So they want the press to like them. And so they really want to distance themselves from anything that the press absolutely hates. Now, I argue that, so I mean, if Jojo had said something like, look, libertarianism allows people to make their own decisions about other people. I personally think that you have to be actively anti-racist, but that's not a libertarian position. Nobody would have flipped out. Well,
Oh, I still would have been completely turned off by ever joining the Libertarian Party ever again, but okay.
Oh, really? So
It would have been
if
yeah.
she said that that was her personal opinion?
Yes, because I still would have said, okay, the Libertarian Party nominated an anti-racist to be their
Mm,
presidential
mm,
candidate, so clearly they align with her values. And I
mm.
think, and again, I think it kind of goes back to like just a lack of understanding about how extreme this ideology is and that it is an authoritarian like Marxist ideology. It is. So why would I be interested in a political party who would nominate someone for president that is supporting literal Marxism?
Wow.
That
Yeah.
that would be my thought process behind that.
Well, I mean, I guess I would try to differentiate there where the libertarianism has no interest whatsoever on imposing that with anyone. I mean, the objection to Jojo's comment was that there was an obligation of people
Mhm,
to actually be actively anti-racist. An obligation means that it's enforceable. And
mhm,
and everyone was going, whoa, what are you talking about here? How can you possibly say that? Now,
mhm,
if she said, look, I live my life, and she could say, I live my life, I have sex with 5 people, or I don't have sex whatsoever, or libertarianism should be a separation between the personal and what we're doing to other people politically.
mhm.
Does that make sense?
It does, but the thing about anti-racism, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but the thing about the anti-racist philosophy specifically as advanced by Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote, the book How to Be an Anti-Racist, his whole thing is about it's not just enough to not be a racist. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be proactively advocating for anti-racist policies and anti-racist institutions. And so
Mm.
the very basis of being an anti-racist is that you do implement it in policy because that's what's supposed to reduce racial disparities and lead us all to equality of outcomes and all that stuff. And so this is why I say I feel like it's one of those things where I understand where you're coming from, and I do think in their personal lives, people should be able to say and think, frankly, whatever they want. It's none of my business as long as I have the freedom to not associate with that person or be around that person or have that person implement their will on me in any way. I don't really care. They can they can go do all the anti-racist training that they want in their normal life. It's not my business. But like when you're talking about a presidential candidate actively advocating for anti-racism, which would mean in installing anti-racist policies, then
Mhm.
I start to have a problem with it, because then you're starting to interfere in my life. And if we look at, what happened in the New Hampshire Libertarian Party with Gilletta trying to get us all to take a loyalty oath, like I'm sorry, I'm not swearing a loyalty oath, based on Giletta's definition of bigotry and all this stuff. So it's like, it's when it starts to make its way into my life and people telling me what I can think and what I can't think and trying to implement policy to make me act in a certain way, that's where I start to have a pretty severe problem with the whole thing.
Yes, and that's exactly the point that JoJo should have been making as the Libertarian presidential candidate. I mean, let's say that there's a person who's racist, right?
Mhm.
Would you rather that person, okay, they hate you, but they can't do anything to you through the government bullying system, right? They have to leave you alone. Or would you rather have like this large government apparatus that these people can go and take over and then direct that violent power towards you? So libertarians say, no, 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 no. What we want to do is, yeah, sure, people might have a bad attitude towards you, but we want to defang them.
Mhm.
We don't want them to have the control of the government in order to impose that. Now you're saying, look, the anti-racists are just as bad. And I would probably agree with you, especially on a lot of areas. But what we don't want is we don't want them to have control of the government.
Right.
You don't want this gigantic power structure that they can take and then they can use to create laws, to use violence in order to force us to think like that. And that was the big debate around JoJo, because she used words that were basically, like you said, it sounded like she was saying that there had to be a government policy towards this, and that there should be an enforcement of this. And libertarians who were more ethical than SJW were going, whoa, that does not make sense. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But
I
there
mean,
were a lot of people that supported the tweet too, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the SJW say that racism, and this just drives me nuts. They say racism is the worst thing in the world. I used to, I was the #1 writer on Quora for about 4 years, and they would say this all the time. I go, how do you think that? How do you think an attitude is worse than an action? That a bad attitude towards someone is worse than mass murder? Libertarianism is against mass murder. It's against mass incarceration. It's against mass theft. That is where libertarianism fights. This whole thing that, oh, well, a bad attitude is just as bad. How do you get that? That has nothing to do with the big battle that we're fighting. We're fighting this gigantic battle against violence, against violent action, not against attitudes or thoughts. And as a matter of fact, my argument is that we should be inviting racists into libertarianism. Now, bear with me for just a second. Our job is to stop violence. So, the people who are now involved in war, our job is to go out and talk to those people and say, stop killing people. We want you to actually come in to the Libertarian Party, okay, and stop with using the violence. We want you to stop stealing from people. We want you to stop threatening people. We want you to stop beating people. And that could be for whatever reason, including for racism. Our job is literally turning people from authoritarian assholes into halfway decent human beings. Now, a fully decent human being, somebody who loves everybody and practices this radical acceptance type of thing. I mean, I actually know some of these people, and they're absolutely incredible with their practice. That is such a hard practice, and we can do that. But after we put the guns down, after we stop pointing guns at innocent people. So, so much of what we're trying to do is stop that violence, and the bad attitude can stay. You can have, oh, geez, I don't like Mexicans. I don't like Canadians. I don't like Basque. You can have whatever stupid bigotry you want, as long as you're not using violence against them. We libertarians should be breathing a sigh of relief. Because the trouble is that authoritarians will say those same things, and then they'll go ahead and pass laws to use government violence against those people. We're trying to stop that violent part there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So, I mean, I don't know, Dennis, where do we go from here? I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. I'm processing. You've already given me a lot to think about in this.
Well, one of the questions I have is who in our society, is probably the most bigot today.
And it's the left. It's a progressive left. It's the progressive SJW left. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they just say, oh, well, that's not bigotry. Well, no, it is bigotry. Look at the definition. Right. You are being bigots. And they want to be mind readers. They actually think that they have the ability to read our minds and to know what it is that we're thinking. And of course, they'll use dog whistles and this and that. And then they'll use, various virtue signaling, which is what Nick Sarwark got into trouble with right from the get-go with libertarians. He started having like some sort of pledge that he wanted all the leaders of libertarianism to sign. And they were going, what are you talking about? Because there's no end to this, right? Of course, a racist would sign it, and now you have to sign two of them, right? In order to prove that you're not racist and you're not bigoted.
I mean, here's the thing. The question that I have is like, has there been a mad rash of people just running around saying overtly racist things in the libertarian? Like, was there a need for all of these anti-racism pledges to all of a sudden come up? Like, what happened to spur all of this? Was there a series of cross burnings? Like, I'm completely at a loss for why all of a sudden it would be an issue to like that you have to instill a pledge.
Yeah, well, almost all the SJWs point to one guy and one guy only. This guy named Cantwell, whom I actually met the first time that he showed up in the Free State Project. He was, I think he was out in New York, and he fashioned himself to be a comic. I think I met him in 2012 at a Liberty Forum up here in New Hampshire. And he was a terrible comic. He didn't understand libertarianism. He didn't understand joke telling. He kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I didn't want to associate with him. I actually distanced myself from him on several occasions. I know people who actively got up and just left him. Over time, he basically he rejected libertarianism. He became an authoritarian, and he called himself a Nazi. Now,
oh, really?
Yeah, but he was associated with the Free State Project only because he went to Free State Project events and he called himself a libertarian. But he was never really a libertarian. He was never a libertarian. He was this authoritarian jerk, and he was always kind of an authoritarian jerk. He didn't quite understand what was going on, and he finally found his proper home, I think. And so now everyone's saying, well, what about Chris Cantwell? What about Chris Cantwell? What about Chris? And it's like, well, what about him? He's not a libertarian.
Right.
Never been a libertarian. He was not a libertarian. So anyway, so he's the one who actually caused the FSP to put in their statement that we are against bigotry. As though having an illogical thought is somehow we're immune to that. Mm-hmm. And my guess is that there's other, that people will pick. So we have thousands of people in the Free State Project. We have this one guy who really wasn't really part of it. I think he found his right home. But all of a sudden now we have to be going and doing these pledges and doing these things on something that has nothing to do with libertarianism. If you ask me, Carolyn, the people who've actually been the most racist have been the SJWs. And so I think that there has been a rash here. There has been a rash, but it's been coming from the other side. They've been the most bigoted. They've been the most racist. And it saddens me because, I personally don't like hanging around those types of folks. And a lot of times, what they're really doing, some of these people, they can't really, there isn't the overt racism, there isn't the overt bigotry. So they project it like this one woman did on this guy who goes out with a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
She, I am white, I'm racist, so therefore you must be white. It's all projected hatred and bigotry, and they just project it out. And it's the psychology is very, very intricate. And being a thin libertarian, I don't have to actually worry about it. All I care about is your action.
Right.
Are you using violence against another human being? Are you initiating violence against another human being? Then you are evil.
Well,
okay, I don't care you're thinking about it or why you're, what your thought process is or what causes you to do it. Are you doing that? Whereas the SJWs, they have to pretend like they can read your mind.
Right. And I think, I think part of the problem is that how SJWs define violence is going to come into play here, because they're going to say silence is violence. They're going to say words are violence. They're going to say like all of these things like that are not actual physical violence and aggression or violence. But I want to come back to that because we do have a super chat from Matthew and he's asking a question. Matthew wants to know, is the problem with libertarians and to some extent Republicans is that they have more independent thinking, so groupthink cannot push group norms? I will speak to the Republican aspect. I think the Republicans absolutely do have groupthink, and I think it absolutely does push group norms. And I think that there was a time maybe when Republicans had this idea of being more of a big tent. I think that time has passed. But Dennis, what do you think about the libertarian end?
So libertarianism is actually a little bit harder because it's just, from the thin libertarian perspective, it's this very, very, very thin aspect of human nature that we're not going to use violence to violate your body. Yet you own your own body. After that, what you do is okay, and so, if you want to have multiple partners, that's okay. If you want to be a teetotaler, that's okay. Now, libertarianism is so thin that you actually almost have to be something else. You have to be, a Christian libertarian or a Stoic libertarian or a conservative libertarian or a libertine libertarian. It's not a full philosophy. We have a number of situations here on the Free State Project where we have groups that, they're all libertarian, but they don't really talk to each other because they live their lives in such different ways that the people don't actually like each other.
Right.
This was actually the argument that I had with Bill at the last time that we talked, right? We have these libertine libertarians who go, well, I have no responsibility. I don't have to care about anybody or anything like that. And then you have people like me who really think that, we should work towards nobility. We should work towards stoicism, and towards courageousness and towards self-responsibility. So, when this Anthony Samaroff infects people and he doesn't actually help solve the problem, to me, I go, I don't want to hang out with him. Now, I'm not saying he's not a libertarian. He's a libertarian. It's just, I don't want to be with this guy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where that's for me where the distinction comes into play is every single person I think is allowed to have their own personal values. The problem comes when you are trying to force those values onto other people and make them behave in accordance with your values and impacting their life in some way. And so, I don't care if people think all the crazy SJW nonsense they want to in their private lives. I don't care if their bookcase is full of SJW books and they read a little bit of how to be an anti-racist every single morning. That is their life. It is their business. It is not my place to worry about it. It is not my place to control it. But where I start to have a problem is when people are doing things that impact my life and try to force my decisions in a certain way and cancel me or otherwise take my ability to pay my mortgage away or smear me or lie about me in a way that causes me abject damage in my life. That's where I start to have a problem with these things. And I think that, my choice is I don't particularly care what you think. But if you on some level, if you don't align with my personal values, in terms of you're an SJW, or frankly, I deal with this on the other side too, you're a white identitarian or something, I'm not going to associate with you. I'm going to block you. I'm going to keep you as far away from me as possible. You can go live your best life somewhere else, but you don't have I don't want you to have the ability to impact my life in any way. So I don't think we're talking about personal values. I think we're talking about, well, I mean, we are talking about personal values. It's just the problem becomes when people try to force those values onto others.
And that's exactly the libertarian point, is that humankind is so diverse. And as a matter of fact, it's more diverse than you would guess, just because we do have these constraints on our behavior. I mean, if you think about humankind now relative to like the 50s, and the diversity that we see now relative to the lack of diversity that we saw in the 50s. And my guess is that if we actually opened up society so that people could congregate as they choose in voluntary groups and voluntary societies, kind of like we're doing here in the Free State Project, right? We have one community center that's really open and welcoming and that type of thing. We have another one that's really closed and very family, and you have to act family oriented. You have to actually meet these very stiff criteria to be in it. And that's fine, and both can be libertarian. So I think that we have almost two layers. We have kind of, where do we use violence against each other? Okay. And that should be like only when somebody starts violating our bodies. Right. That's where we start using violence. But if somebody thinks a bad thought, or I imagine that they think a bad thought, that's not where we should be using violence. And this is what the SJWs do, right? They think that you're thinking a bad thought, and then they go, oh, therefore I am now authorized to use violence. The Antifa will use personal violence. The SJWs will use government violence. No, it's my body. So where do we use violence? Okay, great. Now, how do we associate involuntary groups that actually support my values and keep me insulated from people whom I personally don't really like? Like for example, Anthony Samaroff, somebody who will infect a lot of people and won't stand up and won't help them when the chips are down. So that's that. I think that dual level is really what libertarianism is going for. And libertarianism is saying, let's pull out the violence and treat that as a very rare exception for when someone violates another person's body. And then everything else, let's use voluntary association to manage.
So let me ask you this. So like I want to talk about like what does violence mean specifically? You just said like it's actions towards someone's body. So okay, I'm gonna make this a little personal, because I learn best through personal stories, and I like to teach through stories and all that stuff. So I've been canceled on several different occasions, sometimes by the right, sometimes by the left. And and basically it's all, anytime that it's happened because there was a person and or a group of people who wanted me to behave a certain way, say a certain thing, act a certain way, toe the line, whatever it was, and they wanted to try to take away my ability to earn an income in order to force me to behave the way they wanted me to behave. So is that considered violence? Where does that fall on this spectrum?
Well, let's bring it down to a person to person, okay? Sure. Let's say, and I don't really want to use myself here, but let's say that you are working for Joe.
Okay.
Okay. Joe doesn't like something that you think. Should he have to continue employing you?
No.
Right, because that would be slavery, right?
Right.
You would be enslaving him in order to employ you.
Right.
So he may choose the criteria that for why he may hire you or why he may fire you.
Yes, I accept that. Yes.
Okay. So now, what about customers? Would you should you be able to decide whether to go to a business or not based on something other than the products that they sell?
Yes.
I agree. I agree. So the problem that we get into here is that government is now so insinuated into our society that it's almost impossible to extricate government. when we talk about these gigantic behemoths that are almost, quasi governments, and they cancel us. All the boards cancel you at the same on the same day, and then you find out that Biden is providing names to them. You go, okay, look, that's really kind of more government, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If we could extricate this violence part out, then I think that we would have associations and groups that would work. Just giving you an example, we have two clubs here who are about 20 minutes apart. Two libertarian clubs. Okay, one doesn't accept, really rejects a lot of people, and a number of people you might go there and they might say, no, I'm sorry, you have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is really open and kind of accepting. That might be the proper model for a libertarian society, a voluntarist society.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help at all, or is that
well, no. So here's my question, because okay, so I agree with everything that was said so far. I think my problem comes in, and I mean, this is something I've thought about, Dennis, because I strongly believe that, like, when someone attacks you, you fight back and you stand up and you say, no, you will not do this to me. And so, like, I for example, I had this stalker Twitter account that was run by a group of, like, SJWs, essentially. They doxed my house. They posted photos of my house on the internet. Like, and for me, that's not direct violence against me, but it's not good. And so I do wonder, like, how like, where does it cross the line? Like, am I on stable ground to defend myself against people who are literally posting my house on the internet, even though they haven't enacted physical violence against me?
So would you be able to use violence against people who
Well, or
post it?
maybe not even violence. I'm not suggesting, like, I don't know where they live, so I can't go and, like,
But
attack
if
them
you
or
did,
anything. And I wouldn't use, like physical violence against them anyway, just because that's just not my jam. If they came to my door with a gun, we have guns, but that's like about the farthest I
right.
would extent I would go to it. And but, like, where, like, do I, and honestly, this is like an ethical question that I have. Like, am I crossing the line by punching back at them when they do this crap?
Well, if you're talking about an actual physical punch versus, for example, one of the things that you could do is you could say, okay, these people are jerks. They're part of this, like, kind of doxing group.
Yeah.
You could use that information as counter information against them.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really where we would go in a libertarian society. That
Okay.
it wouldn't be just, the bad actors lying about you. You would actually be able to say, look, these are liars. These are lying liars
Good.
who lie.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what I've done, so I feel good about my maneuver here.
Right. Because you're using your body to
Mhm.
actually communicate something that you believe, and here you actually have proof. Whereas,
Mhm.
what proof do they have? Not only that, but because they're doing this to a large number of people, like, let's say I was an employer, right? And I
Mhm.
had, and you come in and you have a black mark from this SJW group, and then I look at the SJW group and I say, oh, they do this to everyone.
Yeah.
They're just lying liars. So I can just kind of disregard it.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So what
Okay.
we need is actually more information, and we need information about these whistleblowers,
Mhm.
especially because they're doing incredible harm for no reason other than they're just meanness. And right now, we're not actually taking those steps. I think that there would be a marketplace for going after these guys with something that says, "Look, these guys are just jerks. They're spreading lies, and you should not pay any attention to them."
Excellent. I feel much better now that I feel like I have your blessing to push back on these people whenever they come after me. But I do want to return to the idea of, like, violence for a second, because with the SJWs, and I suspect, SJW libertarians would say on this as well, is that, violence doesn't always just have to be physical violence. It could be emotional violence. It could make you feel bad. It could, like, if I use words that make you feel bad, then that's violence. If I'm not, using the words that you want me to use, that's violence. So how like in regards to like the non-aggression principle specifically, how are we defining violence?
So my body right here,
Mhm.
okay? You go and attack it. You try to enslave it. You try to take it from me. Okay, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about violating the human body. Now you're saying, oh, I'm giving you a bad thought, right? I'm saying something that gives you a bad thought. Well, that's happening inside your head. You have a number of options. You don't have to listen. You could listen and you could just disregard. I'm not actually attacking you. I'm not going after you. So there's when we talk about violence, we talk about the physical violence. This whole thing of defining violence to mean anything that we mean, anything that we want. I mean, it's a clever trick. It doesn't mean anything, though. That's not what the word violence means.
Well, then I come back to the idea of like, how in the heck did so many woke people end up in the Libertarian Party? Because there's a lot, Dennis. There's a lot of very, very woke people in the Libertarian Party that are pushing very woke talking points. Like, how did this happen? I don't understand.
Well, remember, the Libertarian Party has always been a very small part of the libertarian movement.
Mm.
The small L libertarian movement is gigantic. The Libertarian Party is what, 100,000 people or something? Not even that.
Mhm.
It's like some minuscule part, and it's mostly been the Mises Caucus that's bringing in small L libertarians, right? Because the small L libertarian, it used to be this running joke that people would say, "I'm a libertarian, small L, not big." People would just make this comment over and over and over again. Because the Libertarian Party was this place where it was kind of more of a club for people who were kind of sad sacks. They're not really, they're not social. They feel out of it. They wanted to be part of the political battles, but they don't fit in well with the Democrats and the Republicans. They fit in here. If you look at the people who are the SJW libertarians in New Hampshire, for example, none of these people leave their house. They don't leave their house. You do not see them. I used to complain about this. When I first got here to New Hampshire, I was thinking, finally, I'm going to find a libertarian party that actually has real libertarians in. And it was the same group that I've seen in Chicago and Massachusetts and Jersey and New York and Bowl. It was the same group of kind of sad sacks and people who are hiding from everything, and and they don't engage. They don't actually get out and talk to people. I mean, I just was so shocked, and I was perfunctorily libertarian, that I just vote libertarian just to show, there are libertarians out here. Mm-hmm. So I would vote, but I had no interest whatsoever in participating in what these guys were doing. And it really wasn't until the Mises Caucus came in, because they were all like, we're going, we believe in self-ownership. We believe in non-aggression principle. That's really what we're going to stress. I go, oh, okay, great. Now I'm on board. But it was funny at the last convention. We were doing something, and they were spending all this time on this wonkish, Robert's Rules of Order this and Robert's Rules of Order that and stuff. And I said out loud at one point, when do we actually start fighting tyranny?
When Robert's Rules say we do,
a single bit of fighting tyranny yet. And one of the guys was walking by, and he actually stopped. It was like I had hit him. Talking about violence, it was like I had hit his body. He looked at me and kind of like scowled and walked away. Because they're not fighting tyranny. I don't know what they're doing. They're playing some sort of game. Libertarianism is a really important ethic that we have to get out there, that we have to stop violating other human beings, that we have to actually respect each other's bodies, and that we will not put up with actual violence against other human beings when they're innocent people just living their lives perhaps differently than I think they ought to. But so what? That's their body.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really critical. We need to be fighting that. The Libertarian Party, I don't know what the heck they've been doing. I think that they should. I would like to see in Reno we just get rid of that one line,
Yes.
where they say, what is it? We condemn bigotry as irrational. It has nothing. They may as well say we condemn body odor as repugnant. So what? It has nothing to do with libertarianism. Body odor is something that's icky. Okay, don't invite them to your house. Bigotry is something, if you think it's icky, great. Don't invite them to your house. But it doesn't have to do with the fight that we're taking on here against tyranny, against being slaves to our rulers, where they get to decide what we do with our body. That is what libertarianism is all about. That's what the Libertarian Party should be fighting. And that, I hope, is what we'll be fighting in the future. That's actually what the big transformation is going on right now. The trouble with the transformation is that the Libertarian Party has for decades had these kind of wonkish loser brigade people in there doing nothing in terms of really fighting for freedom. And we have to actually say, no, we're going to be fighting for freedom. Now, you can either join us, and be part of yes, every human being is the full and exclusive owner of their own body. You can be part of that movement, or go and join the Green Party. Go and join the Republicans. Go and join the Democrats. That'd be fine. But at least we're going to have one voice out there saying, please, please, honor each other's body, at least to the extent that we will not attack them, as long as they're living their lives as they choose.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, and so this is one of those things that's I feel like this is a matter of prioritization. And I think one of the things I really appreciated about the Mises Caucus and why they ultimately ended up getting my support was they have a very clear prioritization of what they're fighting for. It is very clear. There's a whole pamphlet about it. There are 8 points. If they don't mention the 8 points, they're not taking a position on it. It's just not their priorities right now. These are the things that they are advocating for. And I think one of the things that was compelling to me about that is it was a vision for how we move forward. It was a vision for what we can achieve as a society. And so something like that I've seen a very clear prioritization, I don't see that in the Libertarian Party proper. I don't see that in the Republican Party. I do see in the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party is going off a cliff towards socialism, so we don't even want to talk about them or acknowledge their existence. But it's the Mises Caucus was one of the few places where I was actually able to see, okay, we could focus on any issue in the world. Here are the 8 issues that are the most important to us. And so there was some degree of prioritization there that made it very clear to me about what they stood for and what they didn't stand for. And that's something that I haven't seen as much in the Libertarian Party proper, and I haven't seen it as much elsewhere. What do you think?
Well, not only do they have a prioritization, but their prioritization is in line with libertarian ethics in that they all support self-ownership. Whereas the Libertarian Party has had a number of things that have actually contradicted self-ownership.
Right.
And you have A and not A in the same party. And what do you have? You have basically the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. You have this thing that's so contradicted that anything can exist in there. We are essentially an ethical movement. We're trying to get out from this long 6,000-year history of slavery to rulers. And the only way to do that is to be really, really consistent and be really, really clear. We own our own bodies, not you rulers, sorry, and not you voter who tries to own us through a ruler. We're actually the only group that has a solution to all the big battles that are going on there. The larger government becomes, the more government gets into every single aspect of our lives, the more we have to fight in order to get our personal preference into law, as opposed to that guy's personal preference into law, right? Libertarians say, no, government shouldn't be so insinuated into every aspect of our lives such that you can't have, 16 different choices in this area. What we need in order to reflect humanity is a system where we have live and let live. You have 16 choices in this area, and maybe you don't associate with people who choose 15 and 16. Okay, great. That's okay. But you don't use violence against them, because as soon as you start using violence for 15 and 16, well, 14 will come up next, and then 13, then 12. And pretty soon we're fighting against 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, so there's a question in the chat. Tony is actually bringing up a really good point in the chat, which is about like verbal abuse. And I think his question is, and I just want like your perspective on it. If it like, how does a minor, if we're talking about like violence, like physical violence being the only type of violence, how does a minor disassociate from like a verbally abusive parent that is, how does that work under libertarian principles?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I mean, I think that that's a big area. Right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow minors to disassociate from institutions that are abusive to them, like schooling institutions,
schools,
right? My daughter actually was forced to pee in her pants. You talk about lack of body ownership. She had had an operation on her knee. She couldn't get to the bus. She wanted to go to the bathroom. They wouldn't allow her to go to the bathroom. I hit the ceiling.
Wow.
Right? So they actually think that they should own your body. I mean, would they ever do that to another human being? So yeah, so there is enormous abuse of minors all throughout, especially by government. Government is one of the most abusive of minors that we have. Now, having we devolve power back to parents and back to communities and back to that type of thing. And then the question becomes, well, okay, that's great, but what if this group here is abusive, or what if this parent is abusive? And I think that those are really good questions. There's answers that have to do with insurance. That you take insurance out on people. Also, whether you have larger community associations and how do they protect their children, that type of thing. So in a fully libertarian society, there's arguments about how that might be taken care of. But yes, he's absolutely right. Abuse of minors is just a horrible thing. As a matter of fact, I believe that the non-aggression principle actually devolves all the way down to parents. I believe in peaceful parenting. I do not believe that a parent has the right to beat a child. And I think that is one of the greatest abuses that we see. So I would argue that is a violation of self-ownership, that the parent is a custodian. The child still has self-ownership. The child is not a slave. The parent is still is just a custodian, is a protector there. Now, what happens if the protector is actually the abuser? Big question, right? Now, we see that with government, right? The protector is the abuser. But what happens when the parent is? But yes, I think that the beating of children is one of the great sins that are out there. And I think I would like to see the Libertarian Party working more in that area. But I mean, we have so many areas where kids are being abused, and the systematic abuse of children through the government control of institutions, and forcing these very kids who have all these different preferences and abilities and disabilities into a one-size-fits-all, and then deciding that there's one dimension that the people are going to be judged on, just drives me up a wall.
So Dennis, like, how do we help people to start wrapping their heads around the idea of, like, wokeism, SJWism, whatever you want to call it? Like, forcing your ideas and your perspectives onto other people is not a good thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know why, like, what hit me on the head when I was a child or what have you, to allow me to develop in the way where I'm like, I don't really care what you think. Like, you can do whatever you want. I don't really care. Like, how do we get more people around to this philosophy that you can think whatever you want in your life, just don't force your attitude on me and we're cool?
Right, and now we're talking about the word force. So if you remember in the previous discussion that we had around Anthony Samaroff,
Mm-hmm.
um, I believe that a good person, and good has two different meanings. There's good as in not evil, and also good as in virtuous. And I really mean virtuous. A
Mm-hmm.
virtuous person is somebody who cares for other people, who's empathetic, and who tries not to hurt people. And if there's something that they can do to help another person, it's not that costly, they'll do it. I think that's a really good virtue. I was holding Anthony Samaroff to that level of virtue. Now he could say, well, you're forcing that, and as a matter of fact, libertines will oftentimes complain about this, right? They say, well, you're forcing this on me. And I'm just saying, no, I want to be with people who are like that. And I think that the more libertarian that we become, the more we can break into societies where, good people, virtuous people can be with each other and can be in a self-reinforcing community and can actually, produce great things from that and isolate themselves from people who maybe are, irresponsible and not all that virtuous. I think that you'll see people saying, "Oh, geez, because there's all these benefits, I may actually want to be more like that." But Anthony Samaroff could say, "Well, that's a use of force, right? I should be able to be as irresponsible as I want to be." It's the same thing with the SJWs. Now, I think that the SJWs have an inordinate amount of power because they have control of the government institutions.
Mm-hmm.
They have control of the government institutions and of the press. They don't have control of the general population, but they have control of these things, and thus they are able to leverage all their views in on people. Just like they have control of the Libertarian Party by inserting those few words, or in the Free State Project by inserting those few words, as nonsensical as those are. They insert that, and then all of a sudden they're saying, well, you're breaking the anti-bigotry rule.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe that the more that we can pull government out of the institutions and out of our daily lives, the more we're going to have different societies, different groups of people operating under different things. And I fully believe that there's going to be an SJW society. And it's going to operate in an SJW type of way. And they may very well have a region where you walk in and everyone's wearing a name tag with their pronouns of choice on their,
God.
on their phone. And you go, oh my God. And you go there and you go there with your camera and your hat and your Bermuda shorts and you're taking pictures. You go there for the day. It's like going to Chinatown or something. You go, this is incredible. Oh my God. And then they of course go to your community and, nobody's wearing this. And, women are wearing dresses, and whatever. There will be separate communities having different values, and you can pick and choose where you live, and you can move around and you can visit. Some of them may not allow you in. There may be a Basque group that says, we will not allow in any Spaniards because the Spaniards have abused us for so many years. So if you're Spanish, do not come in.
I feel like you're describing the Amish. I feel like you're describing what it's like when I go to see like the Amish, and you go buy a quilt and a shoe 5-ply and you go home and
it's kind of like that. The Amish, I think, are a great example. I mean, are there libertarians who might want to live like Amish? Maybe, but the idea that they form their own community, that they live in their own community, they make their own investments, they pay their own taxes, and they have their own rules and regulations. And you go in and you buy one of their hex signs, and you go in and they do a lot of trading with different people. Well, why don't we have that for all the different groups? Why don't we have an SJW group and we just go and visit them? You know, and we get pictures. Maybe they have a special type of camera that shows you what you look like as a man, what you look like as a woman. And you just have a glass for the day, and then you walk away. And but they have no power to come into your community and control you.
I actually think that sounds like a fantastic reality. Honestly, like, let people live whatever reality they want to according to their values, as long as they like stay out of other people's business. Like, I don't care. We can give the SJWs New York City. I would have no problem giving the SJWs New York City. It's already destroyed anyway. How much worse could they do?
Well, we talk a lot about what the end game is for Free State Project, and it's probably some sort of secession. How we do that, there's a whole bunch of questions. But we keep on talking about balkanization of the United States. Should there really be one rule for how we all live, given that the government is going down into deeper and deeper levels of personal preferences? And remember, government means that either you submit to them or ultimately you will die. So they're going all the way down for 330 million people, and we're so diverse. How could this possibly be? So, of course, we got Texas wanting to leave, and they want to create their conservative state, and we got California wanting to leave, and they want to be really progressive. And then we have Jefferson County in California wanting to partition from California, and they want to be a different type of thing. We have Vermont wanting to go socialist. Why not allow people to have different sections? And then in the free states, in New Hampshire, we'll have one place where we just are really libertarian, where we actually allow a diversity of people, and we're not using force against each other. So we're living kind of side by side with very few rules, except do not transgress against another person's body.
Yeah. And for me, this almost seems like a better way to live too, because it's like, okay, so you're not accepted in one community. Well, go find another community in which you are. And it leaves space open for people to find, people where they're going to be happiest around and get along with and be able to live by the same values by. And I think like part of the problem is this idea that, everyone should be accepted by everyone else. Everyone should be loved by everyone else. Well, no, that's just not life. Like,
no, it's absolutely insane. We have another club in the Free State, and it's run. I'm going to exaggerate here, just for the point. So let's say that there's a club that's run by more libertarians. Okay.
Okay.
So they do things where people who are more conservative or more family oriented, or more respectable, or more business oriented, they go, boy, I don't really like that. Okay. Now, should there only be one club, and they fight over what that one club should be? Or should they just say, okay, you guys do that, and you know what? Down the street here, we're going to create the family oriented business club.
Right.
Right. Now we've got two clubs, and we're supporting two segments. Two totally different segments. And we're actually more than doubling the number of people who are being helped by free state libertarian communities. Well, okay, why stop at two? Why not have a third one that might actually be more oriented to just businesses, business development, and creation, and that type of thing? So now you have a family club, you have a libertine club, and you have a business club. Okay, great. Why not have that type of diversity? That's what we're talking about in a libertarian society. An authoritarian society says, no, there must be one ring to rule them all. And we must fight over that one ring to rule them all. And we will force having only one type of thing. And so all of a sudden, everyone has to fight. Now, when you have the three different groups, who's fighting?
Right.
If you don't like this, well, go ahead and create a fourth group. Why not?
Yeah. Nothing's stopping you.
That's right. That's right. The government can stop you because they have the guns, and they have the legitimized right to use violence against you should you disobey your ruler's preferences for your body. Mm-hmm. That is to what we object as libertarians. That is where that's our bottom line objection. We say, no, No. Instead, everyone should be free to associate how they associate, create your little communities, and if having a clubhouse isn't good enough, we'll go ahead and buy up, a couple of blocks where you all, can make it a gated community.
Right.
And you could have, your own little golf carts in there and what have you. But you don't have to impose that on everyone or have everyone else's values imposed on you. You just create a small community.
Well, we have a question from Six Semper Tyrannus. Mises Caucus sounds nice, but what prevents it from going down the same route as the Big L Libertarian Party we saw in New Hampshire? I'm a homeless, disenfranchised Dem and veteran. So what I will say is that I don't know if people realize, like the Mises Caucus basically does control the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire now. So it was a little iffy for like a week and a half, but it worked out okay.
Well, it really was strange coming up here and thinking, okay, finally, I'm at the place where we have the highest concentration of libertarians, where we have liberty clubhouses all over the place, where we have liberty meetups every single day. I'm going to two meetups right after this. I have a meetup tomorrow. I have a meetup on Thursday.
Wow.
I have 4 meetups on Thursday, so I'm only going to 2 of them. I have a meetup on Friday. I have 2 meetups on Saturday. I mean, we have so much liberty going on here. I thought, okay, great. The Libertarian Party is going to be so libertarian. This is going to blow the socks off. And it wasn't. It was so embarrassing. So, it's such a relief to me to see the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire actually become more libertarian and get out of this thick libertarian SJW stuff. I would be just as upset, though, if they were thick libertarian conservative values or thick libertarian. I think that the solution is this thin libertarianism for politics, and then having thick groups, voluntary groups form around that. So I don't want the SJWs to leave the Libertarian Party. I just want them to give up forcing everyone to be SJW. Yeah. That's all I want,
They can do whatever SJW things they want to do in their little SJW clubhouse. Just keep us out of it.
Yeah. Stop trying to force all libertarians to be SJW. Same thing with the conservatives. Stop trying to force everyone to have conservative values. Same thing with me. I need to stop. I need to be very careful because I have ideas about, what is a stand-up person and what's not a stand-up person. Mm-hmm. And I have opinions about it. And so I just need to be careful because, these people may not be stand-up people. They may not be people I want in my company. I may not want them in my family. I may not want them in my home, but yet they will not initiate violence. And so therefore I can work with them to try to get government out of people's lives, out of their bodies, out of their bedrooms, out of their leisure activities, out of their workplaces, out of their savings, out of everything.
Well, I mean, in that last part, and maybe this is a great part to wrap it up on, is it's about prioritization of your values. And at the end of the day, it's like if we all have the same goal of getting the government out of our effing business, then that should take priority over like other petty squabbles and bickering. And there has to be some, like, we have to live and let live. We have to agree to disagree. Like, we cannot be fighting on every dang issue. You cannot instill purity tests into things that are political movements, because the minute you instill a purity test into a thing that it's a political movement, and what I'm saying is, like, obviously there's the non-aggression principle, but like when you start putting like 18,000 other qualifiers of like, you have to agree with me on all these 87 different issues, then you're never going to be able to form a coalition to actually enact a political movement. And I feel like that's what's trying to be done in New Hampshire with the Free State Project. It's about, here's our overarching value. This is what we're working towards. Like, everything else is going to be like live your own life, but don't try to force your crap on others.
Yeah, and create your own community. I mean, I think for the Libertarian Party, there is a purity test, and that is, do you agree that you are the full and exclusive owner of your own body?
Yeah.
And that each other human being is the full and exclusive owner of their body. And if you believe that, then you're a libertarian. If you believe that and you follow it consistently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most
It's the
almost every
consistent part that
authoritarian
creates problems.
almost every authoritarian I talk to, they go, "Well, of course I believe that." I go, "Okay, so therefore you believe X, Y, and Z." No, oh, well, we can't allow that. Wait, I thought you just said this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is a purity test, but then with the Free State Project, I don't even think that there's that purity test. Will you use violence against someone, or will you allow them to create their own community? It was funny, the rise of the Moors. Do you remember them? They were the black armed group that got arrested.
Oh, right. Yes.
They were driving up to I think Maine. They own a property up in Maine, and they were going to do some shooting. And they had long rifles, and they made the mistake of running out of gas in Massachusetts. And so there were these 11 black guys on the side of the road with long guns, and they sent every single cop going after them in northern Massachusetts. Right, northern Massachusetts, the progressive center. Right. God forbid that there should be a black guy with the means to defend themselves. And they chased these guys through the woods, and they chased them over hills, and they arrested them all, and all this terrorism thing, and these guys, they just wanted to go someplace and shoot. And they're somewhat separatist, right? They're somewhat separatist. They're somewhat saying, look, we're black, we're Moorish, we ought to be able to have our own society. And I'm thinking, yeah, you oughta. You ought to be able to have it. Why don't you come to New Hampshire that won't arrest you for having a long gun on the side of the road, that will allow you to create your own community, and we won't bother you. Now, if you have an open house and you want to showcase, your community to outsiders, I may come. I may come and learn about the rise of the Moor and understand what you're saying. I may disagree with you wholly, but at least you should have the right to live your life as you choose. And that's the difference between a libertarian anti-racist and the progressive anti-racist, right? The progressive anti-racist saw black men with guns and freaked out, right?
Yep.
We just go, you want to have your own society? Great, have it. Do it. You want to be part of this society? Be it. As long as everyone's in consensual relationship, we're good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Dennis. Well, great chat again. I always learn a lot. I always love hearing your perspective on these things. Any closing thoughts before we conclude for today?
I think that the thin libertarian solution is really the solution that we go for, where we separate our personal preferences, our personal morals, our personal virtues from politics. And only libertarianism gives us that opportunity to separate that. So you may be the most anti-racist person on your block. Absolutely fantastic, as long as you're not willing to use violence against another human being in order to impose your anti-racist perspective. And you may be the most racist person on your block. Again, fine, as long as you're not going to use violence. Libertarianism is trying to decrease the violence that killed so many people in the last century, that continues to kill people, that continues to jail them, that continues to steal from them. And that is the great sin. The sin isn't racism. The sin isn't SJWism. It isn't any of those things. It's the violence. And libertarianism rightfully puts the stress there. JoJo forgot about that. That was her sin. I think that what we're doing with the Libertarian Party over the next year, I think you'll be very pleased with where we're going, Carlin.
Oh, I do too. I'm really excited about it.
You're going to see us putting that back, that self-ownership back into the Libertarian Party.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't have joined the Libertarian Party if I didn't believe in where things were headed, and I wasn't very excited about, what's going on. I mean, honestly. Like it really, like, the energy feels really good. I cannot wait to see what happens in Reno. I can't wait to see what happens over the next couple years. And to be quite frank, I think a lot of people are going to be very surprised at the direction that this all takes. And I think I'm going to enjoy every single second of it, Dennis. I am.
And I just want to say that I think, if you actually want to, live a more full life, libertarianism is just that minimum guardrail. It's not a full philosophy. And I think that there's so much more that we can practice and treat each other well and treat each other like a good man should. So I urge people to go beyond libertarianism. But libertarianism, valuing each other's personal ownership of their own body, has to be a minimum standard. We have to get that into the psyche. And the degree to which SJW libertarians forget that and divert us onto personal preferences around SJWism, they are losing the main argument. They're losing what is important in the libertarian movement, which is removing violence from society.
Well, KDG closes us out. She said, Dennis needs his own channel or should be a regular here. Well, you're invited back anytime, Dennis. I always love hearing your perspective. You got banned off Quora, so you got to go somewhere.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's plenty of things that we could talk about. If you'd like to have an ethical talk on any of these other subjects, I'd be happy to do it. The children's thing, or how a libertarian society would handle X and Y, how a fully voluntary society would handle these things.
That might be, you know what? That might be, maybe I'll solicit questions from like my locals community or something, and we can see what people are most interested in learning about.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about any of those things. I mean, I still have 1,800 essays floating around Quora. So if people want to look up those, have a question, I probably have written about it already. But those answers are, maybe as old as 4 or 5 years old. So.
Well, I think you should publish a book with all those essays at some point. Self-publish a book. It'll be a little reference manual.
I'm having too much fun putting on podcasts, creating community centers, I'm going to be creating a Liberty bus tour. We're going to get like a luxury bus, and we'll have like these trips around the Free State where you go and see all the different breweries or see the different Liberty clubhouses. Or
I want to go. I want to go on the Liberty bus tour. I already live here. I know you can't recruit me to come live here, but I want to go.
No, I have all these ideas, and then there's always the other, why don't you sit and write? Because I've moved to the Free State and I can actually create liberty as opposed to just talk about it. Although, it's really important, I think, to talk to people like you, Carlin, who are in that open and curious segment and actually can kind of translate some of these ideas to people who, maybe they have an inkling that there's something wrong with authoritarianism's submit or die philosophy, but they can't really figure out what's wrong with it. And I think that your ability to talk to that segment and tell them that there is a different way for us to organize. It may be hard to figure it out, but we're figuring it out here in the Free State. Yeah. And I love that we're figuring it out, and I'm happy to talk with you at any time.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to solicit some ideas, and we will set up another stream again, Dennis. I always love having you on the channel. Hey, if people want to find you, where can they reach out? Well, they ought to come to the Shell. Up in the Free States, it's a community center that I had a lot to do to start up. We are there every Thursday night for after party. We have I do a Big Liberty Ideas the first Wednesday. We have movies. I'm actually running right now a Firefly Friday marathon. So we have new movers, brunches and parties and dances. If you really want to catch up to me, come to Pork Fest or come to any of the activities tonight. Come to the New Movers that's down in Manchester. I'll be there. I'd love for you guys to come out and visit us in the Free State.
And if you really want to wait for a couple months, wait until I get my Liberty bus tours thing coming, and come on out. We'll take good care of you. You'll see lots of fun things. You'll meet lots of great people, and you'll start saying, well, maybe I don't want to live in an authoritarian society if there's a society that's moving towards human freedom.
Well, I will definitely be coming out to some of these meetups. I know the Mises Caucus in New Hampshire is having a meetup pretty soon that I'm planning on being at. I won't be at the thing tonight because I've got other stuff to do tonight. Thursday or Tuesdays are my busy nights. But definitely looking forward to all that stuff, Dennis. Yeah, I guess that's all we have for today. But I'll loop back with everyone and find out what you guys want to know, and especially if you're in my locals community, I'll post a question in locals to see what topics you want Dennis to explore on our next chat, and we can go from there. I also do have, if you have not joined my locals community, I do have a community Zoom call coming up in about 2.5 hours at 6 p.m. tonight, kb.locals.com. Yeah. And of course, we have another stream later today with Joshua, nothing remotely controversial, my regular Tuesday night show, where, Dennis, here's what I do. I get a psychic and we talk about the news, and he predicts the future about the news. And it's fun, and it's at 9:30 tonight. So if you've never come to Nothing Remotely Controversial, it's a fun time. All right, Dennis, thank you again for spending some time with me today. I always appreciate you.
Thank you, Carlin, for inviting me, and thank your people for sitting in and bearing with us. Some of these topics are really tough, Yeah. So I really appreciate anybody who's thinking about ethics.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for right now, guys. We'll see you soon. Have a good one.